Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar with Rio SEO, Common Mistakes That Are Killing Your Local SEO. My name is Lizzie. I am Senior Account Manager for Locology, and I will be your host for today's event. A few housekeeping items before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be circulated to all attendees with the presentation within 24 hours of the broadcast. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end. You can, however, ask questions at any time during the broadcast by using the question window in your control panel. If your question is not answered, we will follow up with an email post-webinar. Our speakers include Doug, who's Account Director at Rio SEO. Doug is an Account Director on Rio's customer success team and works with renowned enterprise clients to ensure their local marketing success. With over 10 plus years of enterprise agency experience with a specialization in SEO and local search, Doug is a trusted resource for the numerous brands he works with. He also specializes and has extensive experience in multi-channel marketing, including PPC, email, and affiliate marketing. Our next speaker is Chad, Senior SEO Strategist at Rio SEO. As a Senior SEO Strategist for Rio SEO, Chad brings over 12 years of digital marketing experience to the Rio SEO team. And working with hundreds of brands across local, e-commerce, healthcare, retail, and other industries, he has extensive SEO knowledge and is well equipped to help clients improve their brand's visibility in competitive markets. Our final speaker is Eddie, Local Listings Coordinator at Rio SEO. Eddie brings a plethora of experience in both the digital marketing and software landscape to his role as Local Listings Coordinator at Rio SEO. He plays a key role in facilitating the discovery and optimization of global retailer and service providers' local listings. With his expertise and passion for customer success, he's helped countless enterprise clients achieve their local marketing goals. Without further ado, I will go ahead and pass it over to Rio SEO to kick things off.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lizzie. Great to be here. Thanks everybody for tuning in and being with us today. So obviously, for a little bit of context here on what we're going to talk about, the current post-COVID-19 pandemic environment has really proved to be challenging for many brands, as you know, across all channels of marketing, including local. But it's just become that much more obvious how crucial it is to really do local right and to be in front of your audience and your customers and prospective customers at a time like this, right? It's just proven to be crucial. With that in mind, we work with lots of huge enterprise clients, global clients that have, frankly, very generous marketing budgets even. And we do see periodically even, you know, the best intentioned and most sophisticated brands making certain mistakes and just missing out on opportunities. And so today we have kind of collected what we consider the 12 top mistakes that we see brands making and that we want to kind of talk through how to approach correctly and to win at these activities rather than falling into the pitfalls of, you know, these very common mistakes. So having said that, the first one that we're going to kick off with here is just a complete failure to optimize local pages, or just not prioritizing location pages appropriately in the context of your overall digital marketing and local SEO strategies and tactics, right? So I'm going to just kick this off here and invite Chad into the discussion. Chad, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what this mistake really entails and what the opportunity is here.
Thank you, Doug. Hey, it's nice to meet everybody. Yes, Doug, what you brought up earlier about failing to optimize local pages is definitely an issue we see very often for people who come to us. We see prospects that have local pages that are sparsely optimized, they have rudimentary page structure, they lack schema, they lack content. And given that Google My Business and the listing management has been given them a very push to be in the forefront, and given Google's domination in a local sphere, that users can find information immediately through listings, this is not a surprise because Google My Business obviously is dominating and it's only expanding more, especially in the last 3 years. It's amazing what Google's done. and the local pages themselves are usually an afterthought. But one of the issues we see with this is a lot of users want to know additional information about your company's services and products beyond what they see in a listing. And we saw this during the lockdown. Google My Business did provide opportunities to be able to communicate to customers about different hours, about different operations. But unfortunately, there's more opportunity to express more information on a local page, whether or not what's going on with your business, whether it's curbside pickup, and the details of how that works, the details about hours and staff, etc. That was something that needed to be communicated on both fronts. And one of the problems we see is people want to engage more with some services and products to make a decision. Not only that, someone might come to your local page and they may not be interested in visiting your business, but they might be interested in buying an e-commerce product as well. And many brands offer both e-commerce and local visits. So when someone comes to your local page, there's an opportunity to generate more revenue through e-commerce as well. But getting back to the local experience, having a local page is going to be foundational for your listings for many reasons. For one, it improves prominence. And that's something Google explicitly talks about. Having a prominent local page will impact your local rankings, and in addition to your organic rankings. And to make a separation between organic and local rankings are anything that's ranked in the local pack or the map pack results. Organic is what you see beyond that. And also, the second biggest ranking signal for local results, not organic, local results, is backlinks. And having a strong, prominent website with good backlinks for these local pages is going to help your local rankings. So remember, having local landing pages that are relevant and useful for the visitor is going to be a backbone for the local user experience. And I expect Google My Business to expand even further in the coming years, but you always want to have this in the background as your structure.
Yeah, awesome. Great points. And it's just it's a good reminder that, local SEO is still SEO. So all the fundamentals of SEO apply, whether we're talking local or just standard enterprise SEO and backlinks, as that second most powerful signal. It's a great point that you raised, because that's just as important as it is across e-commerce or other types of SEO endeavors that brands may have. Kind of staying on this theme of on-domain content and pages. So let's dive in a little deeper and talk about your locator structure and best practices versus things to avoid regarding how we treat locators.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. That's obviously a glaring issue we always come across when we look at an initial locator. Often we'll see a locator page that might just list all the results on one page by itself. There's a problem with this because it's going to severely limit the indexability in the online real estate you have for your local presence. Google's just going to index one page for all your locations. You're also going to have one page associated with all your Google My Business listings, wherever it may be. You want to have a specific page that's relevant for a location by itself. In addition to that, you want to have different levels. And when I talk about levels, you want a local page for your state, you want a local page for your city, and of course, you want a local page for the location itself. But some users, or actually many users, may look in a specific state or specific city looking for different locations that might be nearby. This improves the user experience. It gives them better interactivity, and it narrows down what they want to look at and look for. So having these built-out locator with the state, the region, and the city and the location itself will do two things. One, it'll improve your organic presence across the board because you now have maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of different location pages that can be independently indexed and ranked in Google. But also, it improves the relevance for the associated Google My Business listing for wherever that URL is going. And that in itself ties in with prominence. And prominence is a ranking signal. So you want to have a strong backup. You want to have, or I shouldn't say backup, but you want to have a strong foundation for the user experience based on your local page itself and the whole user experience.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. A lot of ground you covered there. But again, let's continue on this theme of on-domain content and local specific content, and talk about the issue of inadequate, thin, or duplicate content that we often see brands, approaching their local campaigns and their locator pages kind of in a templatized fashion, or just not spending the time and attention that they deserve. But why don't you dive into that a little bit more and give us some more detail?
Thanks, Doug. So inadequate or duplicate content is a common problem we come across for major locators that have multiple pages, and they basically have the same text, the same information being repeated over and over again for hundreds, if not thousands, of locations. Now, this content, when I speak about content, I'm talking about the text, the written text that's in information that's in the landing page. It may be localized, and that's something that we always address, to have a localization. When I say localized, means we're using specific cities, addresses, state information that varies across page to page, so it's not exactly duplicate. But it's a common question: is Google going to look at this, and are they going to penalize us for having this repeated over and over again? And from what I've heard and from what I've read and who I've talked to, Google will not necessarily penalize you for having a templated piece of content across hundreds, if not thousands, of locations. But when you have unique hyperlocal custom content, and that is content that talks about where your location's at, what the cross streets are, what building it's next to, what products, what services it offers that's independent of that, we have seen that be a very powerful SEO signal. That's both for the main phrases you may be competing for, and also what we call long tail keywords. And a long tail keyword is a phrase that's 3 words or longer, and it's usually a phrase that you're not tracking in your software wherever you're tracking to see how well your locator is performing. However, 70% of all the searches done online, at least, are long tail keywords. When you have custom hyperlocal copy that's describing your business's products and services in details, you are improving the chance and the signal of ranking much better for those services and products. And Google, it may not come very often where people really search for this, but when they do search for, say, oh, I want to find a coffee shop near me that's open to 2 a.m. or something like that, or they offer this kind of frappuccino latte or something like that. Those details that's written in that content is an additional signal, and it's going to be very helpful for the user because it improves the user experience and improves the SEO. And not only that, it's a tangible asset you now have. That content and text has been developed, you own it, it's yours, and stays there. And it's a win-win-win all the way across the board for the user, for the search engines, and just for your own performance for this local page. So my recommendation is take a look at your locators and look at some of the web pages that are not performing very well. And that's what we usually advise our prospects or our clients to start out with. Look at 10, 15, 50 of them. They're underperforming. Consider getting custom content for each one of those pages to see how well it performs, because we have tested this with several clients now, and we've seen nothing but positive results every single time we've invested into hyperlocal custom content.
Yep, absolutely. I can attest to that too, because I've been involved in some of those tests that have been done and seen it for myself. And it's good that you pointed out it's not always an issue of potential for a penalty per se. It's just really the more value that you offer your audience and your readers, the more that Google is going to reward that. And there's just a bigger opportunity on the table to go after. And the other thing you mentioned, long tail keywords, which obviously long tail keywords maybe lower search demand, but they're certainly less competitive and more, it's easier essentially to rank and dominate for. So lots of good reasons not to ignore this and to really dive into custom hyper-local content rather than a templatized approach. And then kind of pausing for a second, moving away from on-domain content, talk a little bit about reviews in the local ecosphere and how important reviews have become. This, as a general topic, reviews have become really important over the past few years with regards to not only users and gaining the trust and the credibility with potential clients and customers, but also in the context of Google's algorithm, and that's been demonstrated. It's been talked about by Google. It's been demonstrated with industry studies that show that brands that pay attention to reviews and actively manage and respond to reviews, and that means not only the 1-star and 2-star reviews, but all reviews, and maintain a dialogue with their audience. That activity is definitely rewarded by Google with regards to rankings and visibility, and it's really more important that Google sees that proactive kind of approach to reviews, because the name of the game for Google at the end of the day is they want to provide their users with the most positive result and the most positive experience that's possible, right? And so reviews are a huge signal of trust, and so it makes sense that they would put so much emphasis on this. So just wanted to ensure that we cover off on how important that is. And of course, as some of the listeners will know, Rio SEO has a very robust review management platform, makes it super easy and intuitive to track new reviews and respond to them in platform and so on and so forth. So we definitely have a lot of experience and a lot of data to support how important this is in the context of your overall local strategy. So kind of transitioning into listings here for a minute, we'll give Chad a break here and talk about listings best practices. And I'm going to introduce Eddie and ask him to kind of say a few words about approach to listings management and trying to do that, especially in a case where you're an enterprise organization, you've got 50 or more locations and you're trying to manage that data on a manual basis or on a part-time basis. And Eddie, if you wouldn't mind, talk to us a little bit about the dangers and the pitfalls of falling into that routine versus having a scalable solution to manage listings.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And great to be here, guys. And it's easy to manage like single location businesses or even smaller businesses on Google. Manually managing those aren't too tough, but when the key word is more multi-location brands. So that's 50, 100, even 1,000 plus locations. That's where manual updates won't work, and that's where it requires a scalable solution. But just to kind of put ourselves in Google's mindset, Google's goal is to have complete and up-to-date information for all of their listings on their platform. They just want a good customer experience, good user experience. I mean, they are the top leading local search platform. So, and then that would be one of their top ranking factors too, would be listing completeness. And so they want their platform to accurately represent the real world. And so when a listing does not do that, whether that's wrong hours, phone numbers, or website, which all ties into listing completeness, and is a big factor in ranking, or if you don't have that up-to-date data, Google wants to supplement those listings. There's a little bit of trust lost, so they want to get that information from somewhere else. So they'll try to update the data themselves, either from like pulling that from other websites, or even allowing Google users to suggest edits and having those edits display on your listing as well. And Google users, that can be anyone that has a Google account. I could even be here I'm in San Diego, California right now. I've never been to New York, but I could go to a listing on Google Maps in New York to a business I've never been before, suggest an edit, and it can get published even though I have no information on that business. So those edits, whether right or wrong, will appear in your listing instead of the information that you could have controlled. And so those are some big points. So that's for ranking and even Google's trust in your information. But there's obvious reasons why you want to keep those that information updated. So like a customer, and the customer base is a really big reason. The customer that acts on the wrong hours, they show up at the wrong time. A customer that acts on the wrong address, suite number, or even map pin, they show up at the wrong location. And so there goes your customer's trust that you have the correct information displaying on Google.
Yep, absolutely. Those Google updates can be so frustrating for brands, and it definitely takes an effort to stay on top of them and ensure that people don't get in trouble with having inaccurate data out there and sending people on a wild goose chase, essentially. And I've had that experience myself, and I know how frustrating it can be. But sticking on kind of this topic of listing management, let's dive in a little deeper, talk about duplicate listings and rogue listings and or ownership issues that come up. And this is a tricky area. Lots of brands are not really skilled and educated about how to handle it. So talk to us a little bit about the right way to approach this.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, these are some different terms as well. So duplicate listing can be just a listing that's published, two separate listings that are published with the same information on Google. A rogue listing would be a listing that you don't own or manage, could be owned by by no one, it's just unclaimed. And then ownership issues, that refers to you may think you have access to a listing and it has that duplicate status in your account, in your Google My Business account. However, you don't have access to the legitimate listing. Someone else may have access to that. So I just wanted to draw the line there. But I mean, duplicate listings are confusing for everyone. I know for Google, they don't know which listing is the legitimate listing. And especially for Google users and customers, they would be confused. I mean, if I were to go into Google and see two different listings for the same business and they have the same name, maybe they have the same phone number, but let's say ours are different, which listing do I trust? When am I able to actually go in and walk into that store? So it's confusing for customers as well. And then for the business owner, seeing that duplicate status, maybe thinking that they have a listing and have access to a listing that's published, but they really don't. Or maybe their published listing was published one day and then you check back tomorrow and it's no longer published. It's put into a duplicate status, because Google does, and we have seen that recently, where Google will merge two listings without you even knowing. And your listing will be merged with another listing that you don't own, and then now you no longer have access to that listing or control over information as well. So it's all some confusing stuff out there, but I mean, that's why it's a great idea actually, to monitor your listings on Google Maps actually. So I mean, I would just go to Google Maps. You want to see what customers are seeing, so type in those common keywords that customers would type in to find your business, and just evaluate what's on the map pack. See if there's some duplicate listings out there that you may not have ownership of, or someone else may own it. And that's where it'd be a good idea to go to Google support, get those listings merged, or even there's an opportunity to suggest an edit right on that listing on the duplicate listing to mark it as a duplicate of the business that you own as well. So you want to clean up and manage those as best as possible. And so, and even a great thing about that too is, say there's two different listings that are duplicates of each other. If you were to merge that and they had two different sets of reviews on there, those reviews will get merged as well. They'll get aggregated into the one listing. So that's good news right there as well. But the biggest disadvantage, and why you want to manage that as well, because some people can think, hey, I'll have a better visibility if I have multiple listings out there, right? Well, aside from it being harder to manage, yeah, you may have two listings out there that customers will see, but it's pretty much splitting up your traffic. So instead of having all reviews, which is a factor in ranking, on one listing, the reviews are split up, and so is traffic as well. So it's a big disadvantage having two different sets of information that you can or can't control, and then also having your traffic split up and therefore reviews split up as well. So either aren't performing as well as if you were to just have one listing, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and that, yeah, you're hitting on a really important point in SEO in general, just the whole issue of splitting equity at any duplicate content, whether it's 2 pages or 2 listings. That concept applies, and it's important to, wherever possible, consolidate that equity, which feeds into the overall authority, and it really sets you up for optimal performance and visibility, and kind of touches on the whole topic of cannibalism as well. So all very good points and great reasons to stay on top of the dupe issue. So great points. And then transitioning here, talk a little bit about, Eddie, all of everything that you just kind of said and give us some context around do's and don'ts with regards to Google's guidelines, and then just the risk, that is entailed in doing something that may be tempting and that you feel might give you better visibility, but is technically against Google guidelines. Just what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that has to do with what suspended listings out there. Not following Google guidelines equals having your listing suspended. And so, that's the biggest thing. They put those guidelines out there for a reason, and have documentation on how to legitimately represent your business on Google, and which business types can also be legitimately represented. So it's a good idea to read. A lot to read, definitely a lot to read, but a good idea to read it. But here are some tips on the do's and don'ts. The things the top factors that we've seen why listings get suspended due to not following those guidelines. Top one is just keeping your business name on your listing consistent with how it's represented in the real world, but then also on your website. And that's branding 101, right? But businesses that try to keyword stuff their business name will get suspended if someone draws Google's attention to it. And keyword stuffing, yeah, it may work. It may, because the keywords in your business name are a factor in ranking, but keyword stuffing is against Google guidelines, right? So your listing will be suspended, therefore no one will be able to see your listing anyways. So it backfires. So keeping that consistent, again, Google wants your business name to represent how it is in real life, and also how it is on your website. The second thing for you service area businesses that serve customers at a customer's location, just keep your service area within only 2 hours of driving time. It's on the Google guidelines right there, but yeah, it's a huge factor. So we've seen some people put the whole state as their service area, or even the whole country as their service area, and therefore get suspended. And then the second biggest thing, which is a huge no-no for Google, is using a PO box, a mailbox, or virtual office as your address, even if it's hidden. So we've seen listings get suspended, and those can be indefinite suspensions right there, actually, using those types of addresses. So doing either of those can get your listing easily suspended. And then as far as hours go, just provide your customer-facing hours, like for your physical location, not the hours that your phone may be operational. We've seen that some customers want to put like, hey, this is when my phone's operational. But if customers can't walk into the store between those hours, Google doesn't want that to be represented like that. So that's one important thing. And then lastly, just creating your listings that represent a legitimate business on Google, or even a department within a business. They may offer different services than the actual business that it's in. But of course, if you're ever wondering as a business owner whether your business is eligible to be represented on Google Maps and how, read the guidelines and ask an expert for help. That's some gray areas for representing your business on Google, but with those gray areas, that's where an expert comes into like, it's just handy, right? And then last thing I wanted to mention was just any way you're operating outside Google's guidelines can get your listing suspended, and it can also draw attention to other listings in your account. So just try your best not to trick Google, because all that stuff can backfire.
Absolutely. It really just equates to it's black hat SEO applied at the local level, and sooner or later Google's going to find out, and it's going to cost, and the cost is definitely not worth the potential benefits of trying to cheat or any of these other things that you touched on. So great points. Sticking with listings yet again, let's dive a little deeper, talk about images and best practices around images, and specifically the mistake of using old, outdated, generic, non-representational images, and then also just the potential benefits of getting this right.
Totally, yeah. Thanks for asking that. And photos are huge, not only for ranking, but also for your customer base. It's huge in that conversion standpoint, that search to actual in-store sales. Making sure that you have unique images on a listing, and then also that you update those images fairly often, that helps to increase ranking. Those two factors right there. And so as far as the types of images you want to have represented on your listing, I would say number one is storefront photos, because that's also for your customer base, and then that's also for Google My Business support. So to talk about the customer base, of course, it's just familiarity. When you see the storefront or the storefront photo of the business that you're looking at on Google Maps, that just breeds familiarity, so that they see that on the listing and then they know where they're walking. There's more familiarity and comfortability about walking into the store, right? And then aside from that, that's huge for Google My Business support. If you have any issues on your listing, or if you want something added to your listing, you need to put in a Google support ticket. Actually, one of the first things they ask you is, can you provide a storefront photo of the business? They want to see, again, that it's represented legitimately and that it's a legitimate business before they would escalate that request to their team to actually get that issue corrected. So it's huge, and it cuts down the time that it would take to get an issue corrected if you already have the storefront photos on your listing. The second thing is vibe or interior photos, and this is for customer experience purely. They want to see ambiance. Customers want to see the experience that they'll have when they walk in. And I mean, for a restaurant, that could be just the layout of a restaurant. For hotels, it can look like common areas, pictures of the room, the hallways, the front desk. And then for hospitals, it can be like waiting rooms, patient rooms. And this is really what draws your customers into your store, into your facility, to experience something special. And then the next type, and the last type I'll mention is, I mean, for restaurants, it could be food. For retailers, it can be products. And then for service type businesses, even a photo of the service that you offer. And this just gives a customer an idea of the quality of your business, what to expect, and also how they can expect to be served. And so all the images that I mentioned, the storefront photos, the Viber interior photos, and then also those like product type photos, all of those are going to be unique images based on the location. The only image that you'll have that would not be unique would be the logo image, of course, and that's really only used on the profile of the listing.
Right. Yeah, you covered a ton of information there, all really awesome stuff. And I know that we've seen recent industry publications, testing that's been done that really has demonstrated that the more optimized images that brands are publishing on GMB, the greater their visibility, because Google recognizes the enhanced user experience that comes along with being able to see the product, or as you said, the vibe, the interior of a local business before they ever visit, right? So just really great information there. Okay, and then while we're on listings, let's talk about attributes. So there's obviously here in the recent several months post COVID-19, there's been several new GMB attributes that have rolled out to help businesses really communicate with the public around safety guidelines and precautions that are being, put in place and or are not potentially. Things like curbside pickup or no contact delivery or no contact pickup and things like that. Talk to us a little bit about not only the COVID-19 attributes, but just in general, the whole potential pitfall of not recognizing the power of GMB attributes and ignoring that versus the upside of really optimizing those, and paying due attention.
Definitely, yeah. And thanks for asking, because this is actually one of my favorite conversations. It's actually been pretty exciting to see what Google's rolled out because of COVID. And attributes were important before, totally. Now, however, it's become more of an importance since COVID and the new attributes that they've made available. I'm not sure if anyone else has experienced this, but I mean, just during a time of uncertainty more than ever. And I mean, my wife and I are remote workers, so we just wanted to get out and about and go to a coffee shop. And this was more towards the start when Google had first rolled out those takeout attributes. And we were looking for a place to actually have some coffee and take it out and take it down to the beach so that we can walk around. And I think we went to about 3 or 4 coffee shops that said that they offered takeout, but they actually didn't. And so we were pretty disappointed. And then we found some other coffee shops that didn't actually say whether they had takeout or not. There was just no attributes at all. And so definitely during this time, during COVID, attributes are super important to tell your customers how your business, how you're operating, whether they can actually walk into a store, or whether they can take something out. But here are some examples of the types of questions that Google users would have, and the types of questions that you can answer as a business owner and as a business if you have your attributes properly enabled. So for a restaurant, a question can be, are reservations required? And can I even dine in? And another question, do they have outdoor seating? And you may find out that they don't allow dining in, or you may find out that they don't allow outdoor seating, but is there at least pickup available or even delivery? Maybe even contactless delivery. Same with retail attributes like curbside pickup, in-store pickup, in-store shopping. And then for healthcare, they even made an attribute available to post your COVID-19 link. And that's just a link that leads to a page that shares with your patients how you're operating during COVID, like the safety precautions you're going through during COVID, just to make them feel more comfortable to come into your facility. But if they're not comfortable yet, a question that you can answer through attributes that they may have is, do they have online care available? So super important attributes. And as for what to know about attributes, some attributes may be available to certain business types, and then it may not be available to other business types. So for example, a restaurant that can have dine-in, but a radiologist would not have dine-in, right? So super important to note that you should definitely check out which attributes are available, because that's all populated based off of the primary category. And so your primary category will determine which attributes you have available. But it's also important to note, don't update your primary category just so you can have certain attributes available. Primary categories and then even additional categories on Google are some of the top ranking factors. So you want those to be really accurate. You want those to be, the service that you offer. The primary category should be accurate, just to the point, so that when someone's searching, they'll find your business, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to get into ground that we covered on the last slide regarding, kind of gaming Google by picking an attribute that gives you access to information that you're interested in publishing, but really isn't descriptive, or picking, categories specifically and cherry picking them based on the attributes that are available. Because again, that's gray, if not black hat SEO. It could get us in trouble. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, you've really covered a ton of ground on listings optimization here. Really appreciate it. I'm going to give you a little breather because you've been talking for a little while here, and just talk a little bit about mistake number 10, failing to activate local data. Really what we're talking about is not doing a good job with reporting and not paying attention to the actionable insights that are available with reporting, right? As a result of reporting, if you're not doing reporting, if you don't have data reflective of your marketing activities in front of you, you're really flying blind with regards to, whether it's local search and local SEO initiatives or any other digital marketing channel, right? So this is really what drives everything, or should, in your overall strategy, and those actionable insights that you can pull out of your local data and your performance data really translate to the tactics that make up that strategy, and can help you move the needle and improve incrementally in your local SEO endeavors, right? And so just want to make sure that we give proper attention to that whole topic, and to mention, obviously, Rio SEO as a platform, definitely the platform serves the purpose of kind of being a source of truth for publishing local data, but it also is a source of truth for pulling in performance metrics, from sources across the local ecosphere. Google, GMB obviously, but Facebook and Yelp and many other important publishers across the local ecosphere, as well as integrating with Google Analytics and other analytics packages, so that brands can actually have all of the relevant local data in front of them in real time, and really make those decisions that are going to help them move the needle in their local search campaigns. So just a really important topic. But moving on from there, I'm going to pull Chad back in, and we're going to dive into a little bit more kind of some technical topics, kicking it off here with mistake number 11, poor use of structured data. Essentially, we're talking about schema tags, and either ignoring and failing to take advantage of that opportunity, or doing it wrong. But Chad, talk to us and give us some insights around how to properly approach structured data.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So yes, this is a common problem we see all the time, where structured data has either been improperly used, and structured data can be used synonymously with schema. They're not exactly the same thing, but for the sake of this conversation, they would be. But it is a coding that was going to help the Google bot and search engines better understand what is on your website, and better look at the content, better look at what the videos are, better labels to understand where these attributes are. So my analogy for structured data is like walking into your own garage that's full of boxes, okay? And in your garage, you may have boxes for holiday decorations, you may have boxes for summertime activities, and you usually have a pretty good idea what's in your garage just from your time living there. But if you have all these boxes labeled with easy to see labels, it's a lot easier to find out what's in your garage. So structured data is a special coding that will help highlight these attributes. And what this does is it makes it easier for Google to produce what we call rich results. And a rich result used to be called a rich snippet, they call it rich results now, is anything in an organic result you see in Google that is differently than a listing itself. So review stars, breadcrumb links, anything that's more visual that stands out is something that Google will attribute to that local landing page. And the advantage with this, obviously, is that it improves click-through rates, improves user engagement, and it gives your business a competitive advantage. And there are tools available to test your structured data. Google had its Google Structured Data Testing tool that was around for a long time. They're actually going to retire that tool. It's still available, but now they have a rich results tool that gives you even more information about what type of rich results you can obtain having this. So the point being is anything that's on your page that's visible to the user can probably be marked up with structured data, and you want to use it as much as you possibly can. And just as long as it's relevant and it's available and it's visual, it will be within the best practices of Google if it's there. And we have done a lot of work at Rio to really go a step further to see it, to look at all the available attributes that can come with structured data. And we've seen some results with this. It's helped many of our clients achieve rich results and see better click-through rates. There has been a theory that structured data in itself may be a positive ranking signal. I can't confirm one way or another on that, but with that said, it doesn't hurt. There's no drawback, and really take an extra moment to use JSON LD, which is a templated script we use for structured data to really mark up as much as you possibly can. So never leave that out. Make sure you test it. You may see warnings in your code. That's not a problem, but errors, an error is an error. That's a problem. You want to make sure to get that corrected, and so that way you can improve the probability of getting a rich result. So thanks, Doug.
Yeah, awesome, man. That was so much good information, and I personally am a big fan of schema and structured data. I know it's a huge opportunity, and so many brands are not really taking advantage of it to the extent that they could. So lots of great info there. So moving on, Chad, I'm going to stay with you and get your insights. This is the 12th and final mistake, and what we're talking about is essentially web performance, page performance, core web vitals, as it's often referred to in the industry as of late, with regards to how important site performance is in Google's overall algorithm, as well as with regards to user experience and just the kind of the latest insights that you can share around what the implications are here, how brands should be handling these issues and optimizing these issues, and anything else that you can add around this topic.
Thank you, Doug. So yes, download speeds for your website for both the desktop and mobile experience is something that Google's been paying attention to for a long time. Years ago, they came out with the Google Caffeine update. That was more for desktop. They were really interested in speed, but how they measure that could be debatable. It could be what we call time to first byte, which is a hosting issue, or it could be measured by different tools. And then there was Mobile Get-In a few years ago, which was really focusing more on the mobile experience. And given that there are more mobile users than desktop nowadays, that obviously having a fast mobile download experience is going to be something Google's going to look at and actually consider a ranking signal. But recently, they took things even a step further with this new interesting development called Core Web Vitals. And they have announced that in 2021, this will be an official ranking signal. Now, with Core Web Vitals, this takes a look at different operations and structure of your download speed, not just the time to first byte or how long it takes for the whole entire website to download, but they have 3 vitals they measure with this. They call it large contentful paint, first input delay, cumulative layout shift. And I'm not going to get too technical with this. I'm just going to brush across this real quick, try to keep it in layman's terms. But basically, large contentful paint is the time interval for when your page starts to load and the large image or the text block that really takes up the landing page is fully rendered. So what the meat of your page is, how long that takes, is going to be looked at and gauge and judge independently. The second thing would be the first input delay. So the first input delay is basically how long does it take for the page to load where a user can take an action, where they can click on a link, where they can scroll, where they can click on a video, etc. How long does it take for all that information to be available in the download speed where you can actually make use of the website? And the last but not least is what we call cumulative layout shift. And this has to do with how fast the images, the media, and the text attributes align on a web page. Sometimes when you load a website, you'll see that the image might be larger or smaller in relation to the surrounding text and the other attributes like navigation and the links. And then it'll shrink down and you got what you need for the end user. Well, Google wants to see how fast that takes. So the bottom line is this. Google Search Console is where you need to be paying attention to all the time for this. Dig around. It was developed on purpose years ago to communicate with webmasters. And it used to be called Google Webmaster Tools, and they changed it over to Search Console. But that's going to report how Google really sees your site. It's really straight from the horse's mouth. And there are 2 other tools that can help you with Core Web Vitals. There's Chrome User Experience Report that does it, and so with Google Page Speed Insights. But pay attention to what they're saying, and if there's an opportunity to compress images so they load faster, or to minimize JavaScript, or to make adjustments on your development backend to improve page speeds, that's important because that's going to help the user experience, and that's something that Google's going to pay attention to. So thank you, Doug.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Much respect to you on your technical SEO prowess and knowledge. You just dropped a lot of very technical information on us and made it sound relatively simple to follow. So that was awesome. And I completely agree with you. Google Search Console is, if you want to do well in Google, listen to what they are telling you. And Google Search Console is the opportunity to do exactly that and get the stuff right. So definitely don't neglect all of that very useful info that Google makes available to brands and publishers around the site experience and what they actually see when they crawl your site. So that's really great stuff. And that brings us to the end of our discussion here. That's pretty much covers it. I believe we're going to go into a few minutes of Q&A, and we might have a few questions to answer. And I'm going to go ahead and defer to Lizzie on that. Do we have a couple questions here?
Yep, we do, and great presentation too. So we did get a few. It looks like we'll have time for a couple right now, and then if your question again wasn't answered, we'll follow up post-webinar. The first question I have is, do you have any advice for testing and optimizing keywords on local listings and local landing pages?
Chad, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we could probably talk about that now. I'm sure Eddie have a few things to say about this, and he touched upon this earlier. You actually cannot use keywords as an optimization tactic in your actual Google My Business listing beyond what your official business name is. So trying to optimize a Google My Business description of keywords from what we've seen and what we've read and what we know has not been helpful to your ranking and your optimization. Also putting keywords in my business title, and I'm sure Eddie will agree with me, that's stuffing. And it might help you. You might get away with it. You might see other people cheating, but at some point, Google's going to come along and crack down on that. And from what I've seen, I think there's going to be a reckoning for a lot of this down the road at some point. But Eddie, I'm not sure if you have anything else to say. Yeah.
No, that's big. I'm glad that you mentioned that, Chad. And Google has even more recently been just trying to crack down on businesses that do that. So where before, you can slide under the radar a little bit, now it's becoming increasingly harder to slide under the radar, trying to keyword stuff business else. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Chad.
Yep.
Okay, and then the next question I have is, can you discuss the importance of title tags and meta descriptions and if these factor into SEO?
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, I can say a resounding yes. They factor into SEO. The title tags themselves are an SEO signal. The meta description tags themselves are not weighted from what we know in the search results. With that said, how the meta description tag is written, if it has a call to action, if it's intriguing, can influence click-through rates. So you want to make sure the meta description tag is carefully written, appropriately written to encourage someone to visit you, saying, come here to visit, learn more about our products and services. We offer this and that. That's important. And that's been that way for a long time. It must be at least 20 years now that the title tags are still a ranking signal. So absolutely keep an eye on it. And having duplicate title tags or just having your brand name in the title tags is a big opportunity lost. You don't ever want to do that. Find non-branded phrases that relate to your business and optimize them accordingly, and make sure you avoid having duplicate title tags across several locations as well, because Google won't respect that as much. So thank you.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. And Doug, did you say there was another way that they can ask questions if they run into anything after the presentation?
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead. Anyone who has questions or comments, shoot us a note at marketing@rioseo.com. We will do our best to respond to every question that comes through. And of course, you'll be able to get a copy of this recorded webinar and stay on top of the future webinars that we'll be doing, including those that we do in conjunction with Locology over the coming weeks at our website. We've got a resources page, real easy to find on our website. So feel free to visit that and bookmark it and track all of our future webinars as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. These were great questions and discussion, and I just wanted to give a thanks to Rio SEO too for putting together this presentation for us.
Absolutely.
Just a few more items from Locology before we end today's webinar. You will be able to view today's broadcast along with previous webinars on our website, locology.com. Just navigate to Research and Resources and drop down to Webinars. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to visit locology.com and subscribe for updates to be the first to know about future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.